Hey, what is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe, host of the Sports Vibe. I'm also host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, host and producer of the Do You Know What Time It Is roundtables every Sunday night, or most Sunday nights on my show, and also host of the monthly Good Men Project show. But you know what? Tonight is sports, and it's 7 o'clock. Brandon's here. We got a lot of topics to share about tonight, but Serena and Venus are playing right now.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be interesting if Venus beats Serena? Oh my. But we'll leave that. Let's get right to it. Brandon, what is up? How you been, man? You been good?
I'm very good. You got me nervous now. You're talking about Venus beating Serena. You're making me very uncomfortable. I'm not. I like, they've got the history. They hate playing one another. They both admitted it, and I'm rooting for Serena mostly just because I want to see the four in a calendar year. It hasn't been done since Steffi Graf in '88. So I enjoy watching history, and Serena has been, arguably the best female athlete that America has ever produced. So I mean, that's. She's in rarefied air if she doesn't win anymore already. But this tires her for the all-time Grand Slam lead. So I'm on pins and needles and have been since she started this final leg of the chapter here.
No problem. Let's get to what we're going to talk about. We got a wide array of topics, but NFL season is coming up.
Yes.
So tonight we're going to spend some time on the NFC and AFC East. So where you want to start first?
We can start with the NFC East. It's been a very interesting divisional jambalaya that they have going on there. Pretty much every single team has its own topics and stuff like that. I guess we should start with some of the most recent stories that have been coming out of Philadelphia with Tim Tebow. Once Matt Barkley got traded, pretty much everybody was assuming that Tim Tebow was going to make the roster as their third quarterback behind Sam Bradford and behind Mark Sanchez. That doesn't seem to have happened. They're actually coming in. They're bringing in a couple more quarterbacks to check out. Apparently, they want to keep three quarterbacks on the roster, or at least keep them around camp. It's just that, as Chip Kelly alluded to at the end of this whole 53-man roster cut, Tebow wasn't good enough, and it's weird that we talk so much about a third string or fourth string quarterback. But he's always been able to move the needle. People have always been really, really interested in him, mostly because of who he is outside of the football field. And I guess in a way, in the peculiar way that he seemed to have been able to be effective at the NFL level. So he's always a story. And that seems to be, if he wasn't able to catch on with Bill Belichick or Chip Kelly, I think that more teams will be reticent to try to bring him in and try to do anything with him, because it just seems like he's just not capable of playing at this level. Fantastic college player. One of the SEC legends, absolutely, but just wasn't able to do it. As when you get to the actual team itself, though, there's been a ton of turnover. Nick Foles, former Pro Bowler, he wasn't. They've decided not to go on with him, and they traded him for Sam Bradford, who has had his injury concerns. And at the quarterback position, you don't really want any sort of upheaval, but hasn't been able to finish the last two seasons. Has yet to throw for 60, has yet to complete 60% of his passes in any single season. Has had some tough interception years. Even when he's been healthy, he hasn't been particularly very good. So it was a little bit of a surprise to see them part ways from Nick Foles. They got rid of LaShawn McCoy. And part of that was, he became embroiled in this conversation about whether or not Chip Kelly has some sort of problems with black men or the culture, as it has been alluded to by former coaches and former players. That was just a mess of a topic. No one was really able to pinpoint anything in specific as they were leaving, and they were all, you could make the argument that they were all disgruntled former employees making these claims. But if some other people thought that if there's smoke, there's fire, and there seemed to be continuous whispers about whether or not he had some sort of problem dealing. Honestly, I kind of just felt that he had more of a problem making that transition from college, where the coach is the center of the universe and he's the center of everything, to the pros, where, it's more of a partnership. Like, yes, you're the coach. So yeah, you have the decision making about whether or not somebody's going to play or somebody's not going to play, but you're not at all the hierarchy is a little bit different. You aren't the end all be all or some, quasi demi guy what it can be in college. It's more of a partnership. And I think he's had a bit of a hard time making that transition, but the offense has been Absolutely fantastic. They were third in points per game. It was really their defense that struggled last year. They were 22nd in points per game allowed, and they weren't able to make the big stops when they needed. Another 10-6 season under Chip Kelly, but missed out on the playoffs. It's going to be interesting to see with all the upheaval and all the changes if people are going to be able to kind of separate some of the off-the-field stuff that has been surrounding this team for a long time. If they don't play well, especially in that city, that doesn't, despite being the city of brotherly love, they respect winners, and Chip Kelly has yet to have that sort of success in the postseason. Something that followed him while he was from Oregon. So if he struggles again after having the difficulties off the field, it's going to hurt this team in the future.
And it's interesting. I didn't know that Kelly was bringing in more quarterbacks, but it makes sense because I think he must, in the back of his mind, think, is Bradford going to last the whole season?
Absolutely. I mean, look, he hasn't finished the last 2 seasons, and he got hurt in college. Like, he has a history now. Like, whether or not he's able to stay healthy and be healthy moving forward, he's going to always have this red flag about him about whether or not can he stay healthy. He's had some success, and he's wowed some people with his talent, but the fact that they say the best ability is availability, he simply hasn't been able to produce that. So moving forward, if he gets hurt again, I mean, you have to be comfortable with whoever is in that backup role. Now, Chip Kelly, for what he's worth, he's always been on the offensive side of the ball, at least, a very plug and play guy. Like, it doesn't matter who we have. The scheme is such that it's going to allow the team to do well and continue to do well. So that's kind of been his calling card ever since he was, back in New Hampshire, way back when. He's always been looked at as an offensive guru, and that regardless of whoever is on the roster, he's going to be able to make it work. I think that's why he was comfortable trading a guy like LaShawn McCoy, because you trade him for a star on the other side of the ball, Kiko Alonso, a linebacker that, despite Chip Kelly's success on the offensive end, defensively they've struggled some. And so I think that he's maybe looking for, if not only this year, but moving forward, looking for the bigger names, and the more he's going to spend more on that side of the ball, because I think he feels a little bit less comfortable with whatever defensive scheme he's going to come up with.
Well, and we don't want to spend too much time on Philadelphia, even though they make the most noise. But I think a team that's made as much noise in that division has been the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, I mean, nation's capital. They are consistently in the news blotter for some reason, and very rarely because of something football related. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not RG3, Robert Griffin III, was going to be their guy moving long term. Early on in the camps, early on in preseason, everything was, hey, RG3 is our guy. We're going to keep he's going to be the one that's going to lead us. After he gets hurt, pretty much an immediate 180, and now you have Kirk Cousins starting in that role. There was a lot of talk about whether or not you're going to keep him, whether or not they're not going to keep him. So far, I don't know if he's been medically cleared. We're still trying to figure that out, because keep in mind, when he got hurt, he was fine, and then he had a concussion, but then they didn't have a concussion, and now the doctor, the independent neurologist that claimed that he had a concussion has resigned. It's been an entire mess surrounding that entire franchise. And, Jay Gruden and RG3 have butted heads pretty much since the beginning, and kind of continuing what RG3 had with Mike Shanahan, the former coach. It doesn't seem like he should be this difficult to get along with, but for whatever reason, Dan Snyder seems to be the only one that still believes in RG3. For what it's worth, out of the 3 quarterbacks, RG3, Kirk Cousins, and Colt McCoy, former University of Texas quarterback, I really think that they made the worst decision. I think Kirk Cousins is the worst of the 3. In the bigger stages and the longer starts that he had, you saw him really fold under pressure. And you saw him when one bad thing happened, it was a domino effect, and he played poorly throughout those entire games. I think that whatever they're looking for from Kirk Cousins, who has looked decent in preseason, but whatever they're looking for, if he starts to stumble, I wonder if pride is going to keep him on the field for those decision makers, because they decided to go against somebody that has at least had the most success out of those 3. So I do wonder exactly what the motivation is going to be if he struggles early. Are they going to stick with him, or are they going to move on? Because they've got 2 other guys that have had some success at this level.
Good stuff. Hey, I'm looking on their side here. Sir Leaf has joined the conversation. If you have any questions, hey, certainly ask us. And if you want, you can certainly, seats open if you want to go there. Dallas, you know what? Two teams that we haven't heard a lot about, Dallas and New York Giants. Let's start the Giants first, because I hear that Jason Pierre-Paul is going to be coming in now.
Yes, he's going to be coming in. He's going to finally meet with the brass with the Giants. And for those that haven't kind of been keeping up with this whole thing, following the July 4th weekend, he has an accident with fireworks and ends up really having a severe hand injury, the extent of which is still kind of unknown because he simply hasn't met with the Giants, Giants training staff, which seems completely odd in September to not have done this, but he was very, very reticent to do so. And they don't really know what's going on with his hand. There have been reports that he had a finger amputated and that he may have his index finger amputated, and they may have suffered a thumb injury as well. He's finally coming in. They say that he'll more than likely play with a cast. Now, when he'll be playing is still something that's up for dispute. Apparently, there's some back and forth between the camps and between JPP's camp and the organization about when he'll be ready to play. I mean, they haven't had a chance to look at him, so they don't know. What's making this situation even more complicated is the fact that JPP hasn't officially signed his franchise tender. And for those that don't know, his franchise tender is a way for teams to keep a player without having to sign a completely new contract, that it'll be the average of the top 5 players at the position, their salaries, that's what JPP will receive, but he still hasn't signed it yet. And so there was some question about would they rescind the offer? Would they rescind the franchise tag? They seem to still want him to play. It's a little amorous right now between the two parties. I think that they'll get on the same page eventually. And by the time that the season starts, while I'm not sure he's going to be able to play week 1, I think that you'll see him back in that lineup, which is it's really funny because he's dominated the headlines for this team. The most interesting thing to me was last year, they had one of their better and more productive offensive seasons. You can argue that Eli Manning has never had a better season than he did last year.
Last year he had a phenomenal season.
He was great, had the best touchdown to interception ratio of his career, and that is after incorporating a brand new system. They went to that West Coast system last year. Yep. He had Victor Cruz, and yet he still put up those monster numbers.
Remember at the beginning of the season last year how much people were questioning if he could adapt to that new system?
Absolutely. And and to his credit, he was very, very good. They got differing production from their running backs, Rashard James and Andre Williams. They were really kind of doing more of a running back by committee. And he was good and didn't have his number one receiver for a large part of the season, Victor Cruz. Now you saw Odell Beckham Jr. I think everybody, he got put on the map with that miraculous catch that he made, but he was fantastic all season. It wasn't just the one highlight. He was really, really good, went over 1,000 yards in a limited number of games. If you can get Victor Cruz back healthy, and he's still struggling with the hamstring thing, but if you get him back healthy with Odell Beckham Jr., and you'll have another season of Eli under that offensive system, this team can be really good. Now, they've had a really, really rough go of it with their safeties. On the defensive end of the ball, they've had a whole bunch of injuries to the safety. They had injuries to their draft picks. They've had injuries to the veterans that they brought in to spell the draft picks. It's been really, really rough for them. If they can just kind of right the ship in the secondary, and if JPP can still be that force getting towards the quarterback, I think this team can be the second best team in the division.
Okay, well, let's run it off with the Cowboys. And I guess the biggest question, who's going to be running back? And the second question is, will they have any defense?
Yeah, Jerry McFadden is the free agent that they picked up. And, it kind of as great as he's looked at times and while he was with Oakland, he just can't stay healthy. Like, he just can't stay healthy to save his life. And he had a few injury bugs coming in from his time at Arkansas and college, but he really just hasn't been able to stay healthy at all. And so look for Randall, the backup, to get the majority of the snaps, especially early because McFadden missed time in camp. You talked about the running back, and I think that's one of the more interesting topics. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. They had a ton of success with DeMarco Murray as their running back, had one of the best, most prolific seasons in Cowboy history. But now he's gone. And not only is he gone, he's gone to Philadelphia, a division rival. But that offensive line that they've invested all those first-round picks in was absolutely fantastic last year, crushing guys, mauling guys at the point of attack. that actually the running game was so good that it took up so much of the time of possession that their middling defense, it held up a lot of their holes because they simply weren't on the field for that long. Now that defense gets a lot better. Randy Gregory, a first-round talent that they got later on in the draft because of some off-the-field issues. Greg Hardy, another guy that's had his off-field issues, but a guy at the defensive end position, formerly of the Carolina Panthers, able to get after the quarterback. Their middle linebacker, Sean Lee, will be coming off of an ACL surgery, one of the better middle linebackers in the NFL. They've gotten a lot better. Oh, and that's not even to mention Byron Jones, their first-round pick, the cornerback, one of the most athletic guys out of Connecticut. They got a lot better on defense. And I don't think people realize this. That everybody wants to talk about the running game and how good and the Des Bryant holdout and stuff like that. This team is really, really a lot better on defense. And so they were kind of mediocre 15th or 16th last year in points per game allowed. They're going to be much better on that side of the ball this year. I look for big things out of Dallas.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned about the defense, and I can't remember what they're starting. I think their starting cornerback, though, got injured, and I think he's Orlando Standrick.
Orlando Standrick, yes.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's out for the year.
Yes, he is, and he's been their most consistent and their best defensive player. And so I'm glad you brought it up. They will absolutely miss him, but I just think that they're going to be able to get so much pressure on the ball with Randy Gregory and Greg Hardy and some of those other boys up front. And keep in mind, they missed their first round pick defensive end that missed a lot of the season last year with an injury. He's going to be back as well. This team is getting a lot better. Not to mention they added another, like they needed some more help on the offensive line. La'el Collins, a guy that was a first round talent who fell out of the draft completely because really through happenstance, his girlfriend was murdered right before the draft. The police throughout the entire process said La'el was not a person that they were investigating, would never arose to a suspect. But with the NFL that we live in now, teams were a lot more reticent to try to put him on the team. The Cowboys decided to extend that offer, and La'el Collins has gone from being a first round talent to out of the draft completely to a part of this really, really stacked offensive line that the Cowboys already had. So they did a lot of really, really perhaps risky things because I mentioned the off-field issues for guys like Gregory and guys like Greg Hardy, but I think if everybody can stay on board and can stay reasonably healthy, they've got a real shot to be very, very dangerous. They're one of the best teams in the NFC, talent-wise at least. Okay,
so you've done a little synopsis of this division. I'm going to ask you two questions. First of all, who's the MVP for the division, and then who's going to win the division?
I think Tony Romo is going to be the MVP for the division. I really think that I think that you saw one of his better years last year, especially in terms of turning the ball over, mostly because he didn't have to be the guy. DeMarco Murray was the guy for them last year. And I think that for too long, because he is talented, because he can do so many things so well, like scrambling, extending plays, throwing the ball downfield, I think that Dallas felt the pressure. And because they gave him that $100 million contract, Dallas felt the pressure like, hey, he needs to be the face of the franchise. He needs to be the number one guy. He needs to be the number one option. What DeMarco Murray proved was you can have a fantastic quarterback and still be a running team. And I think that this year is going to be very, very similar. I don't think that you'll have a DeMarco Murray-style season out of any one of their backs. But I feel like the running backs by committee behind that line will be very, very effective. I still think they'll have a really, really good run game. And I think that he's going to absolutely shine. And keep an eye out on Terrence Williams, one of their second or third wide receivers. I really like him. Des Bryant is going to take a lot of the coverage. Is going to take a lot of the attention from defenses. I think Terrence Williams is going to have a big year out of Baylor.
Excellent. So let's switch over to the AFC East, and let's start with that team called the Patriots. Oh, you know what? Actually, I did hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dallas traded and got a running back from Seattle.
Yes.
I can't remember that, but that is I can't remember the running back's name, but I think that's going to be an interesting watch also.
Well, they felt comfortable. They said that they felt comfortable with their running backs heading into camp and coming into the 51 once they were coming to the 53-man roster. But because Seattle had picked up
Fred Jackson,
they felt comfortable letting one of their guys go. He goes to the Cowboys, and I think that they know that McFadden, because of his injury history, there might be a real possibility that he's going to be in and out of the lineup. Oakland Raider fans can attest to the fact that he can have a great game and then be out the next week.
Exactly.
I think they've decided, hey, we're going to get what we can get out of McFadden, but we need somebody that's going to be able to spell Randall on a continuous, regular basis, and that's what they're doing there with the late running back acquisition.
Okay, so now let's switch over to the AFC East. And those New England Patriots, Deflategate, Spygate, Gate.
We're never going to be done with this. Like I'm now of the opinion that the Patriots will forever and always be embroiled in some sort of scandal. And it's really weird to say because they've, people respect Bill Belichick so much. They respect Robert Kraft, the owner, so much. But it just seems to be one thing after the other. ESPN recently came out, I think, earlier today, came out with an outside the lines piece, pretty much detailing the fact that a lot of people think that the reason that Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, was so overeager or overzealous to get Tom Brady was because of Spygate. The way that he handled Spygate was that, there was a lot of, secrecy surrounding it. It was, kind of a halfway done investigation, especially if you juxtapose that with what happened with Deflategate that went on for months and months. The Spygate, that whole process really kind of took a handful of days, maybe a week, before they had come not only to the conclusion, but it started doling out punishment. And there are some specific allegations now that are coming out in terms of they were videotaping teams for longer than had originally been planned. They had originally been announced. In addition to the fact that there are accusations, and this is amazing to say, but there are accusations that the Patriots actually had a low-level employee go into opposing locker rooms to steal the playbook of the first 20 plays from opposing teams. Yeah, just stuff that's just, it sounds preposterous to even say. But at the same time, if eventually there has to be a point where, okay, I understand that accusations is not 100%, but eventually, like, accusations are convictions, but there's so much smoke that there just seems to be some fire somewhere, and it gets more and more difficult to really kind of just, it's not that big of a deal, because it's really not the one thing. It's not, oh, we might have deflated some footballs. Oh, we might have videotaped some people. Oh, we might have gone into opposing locker rooms. It's just the preponderance of all of it. If you just put it all together, it feels like you have an organization that is full of cheaters. And there's no other way to say it. I mean, all right, full disclosure, I'm a Panthers fan, so some of this alleged videotaping and Spygate went on during the Super Bowl that had the Carolina Panthers and the Patriots. And you have people associated with the Panthers that have come out and said, look, in the first half, they were up 14-0. It felt like they were in our huddle, that they knew everything that we were going to do. We ended up scrapping our entire play, our entire plan, and changing it all at halftime. And you can go back and look at halftime. In the second half, the Panthers were much more effective at moving the ball, so much so that they get back in that game. And if not for a late vindicated field goal, who knows what happened. So yeah, maybe I'm a little salty about it. I could be just a little bit salty about it. But there's a lot to this story, and there seem to be a lot of different sources that are continuously coming out and saying, hey, even former Patriots were like, hey, we did do this. Former Patriot coaches and people associated with the organization. It's tough, and it's if you're a Patriot fan, I'm sure it's really, really unfortunate, because you feel like you can't even celebrate the wins that you've gotten. Like, you win the Super Bowl, but then that feeds directly into Deflategate, and you want to talk about dynasties, but people are already questioning that. I don't know. It's tough to figure, but this team itself, it's going to look a lot different than it did last year, especially with the secondary. Is one of the best. They were a top 10 in terms of points per game allowed. The secondary was chock full of talent: Brandon Browner and Darrelle Revis and Kyle Arrington. So 3 of their top 4 defensive backs are going to be gone. What the Patriots decided to do was to beef up their front 7. They'll get Jamie Collins back. They picked up Malcolm Brown from Texas at the nose tackle position to take over for Vincent Wilford. So that defense is really going to look a lot different than it did last year. You still have Tom Brady, you still have Bill Belichick, and it's still the AFC East. So
and you still have Gronk.
and you still do have Gronk. So there's and there's going to be a huge. Everybody knows it's going to be the huge chip on the shoulder, the us versus everybody sort of thing that's already surrounding Boston and Foxborough. So it should be fun. I'm glad that they're the ones that kick off the season. It's going to be a really good time.
Who's going to be their biggest competition?
Before we knew that Brady was going to be back for the first 4 games, I was really ready to say that the Buffalo Bills were going to win this division. I'm a huge fan of Tyrod Taylor. I'm an ACC guy. I got a chance to watch him a lot at Vatech. And he's one of these guys that it's not one thing that wows you. You really like his athleticism. You like that he can extend plays or maybe even run and break something long. He has a solid arm, not a huge arm, but he can make all the NFL throws that you're going to need him to make. A little short, a little bit of a shorter guy. But he makes a lot of really good decisions with the ball. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Like he does a lot of the stuff that you would want a quarterback to do. You add that to the fact that they have some monsters on that front line, Manny Lawson, Mario
defense.
Williams, absolutely fantastic. A lot of fun to watch. They were good last year, and that was pretty much with nothing on the offensive end. If they're able to get something consistently off of offense, because keep in mind, there's a lot of really good parts on this offense. It's not just that Tyrod Taylor took over at the quarterback position. You got Robert Woods, you got Sammy Watkins, who did a really, really good job. Hello? Let's accept your camera microphone. Hello?